Hello, good afternoon, everyone. We are just going to wait a couple of minutes for people to join us on this VIGC webinar. So I can see already around 20 people joined. Okay, so let's start. So welcome. First of all, I hope that all of you are safe and going back to situation as normal as possible. And hopefully things in business are getting back to normal. So I thank VIGC for giving me the opportunity to chat with you about automation in web to print. So just a short introduction about myself. So Ludovic Martin, I'm a French blogger and copywriter and consultant specialized in web to print and e-commerce strategy. So I animate a blog on print.watch dress and regarding my background. So I worked for about 20 years in online printing and web to print, and I've been for 5 years Chief Marketing Officer at Exaprint, a Simpress company. And so I share my vision and insights about online printing and web to print with my followers on blog and LinkedIn. So I just would like to talk with you about what's happening in online printing today and which are the opportunities for printers, no matter their size and annual revenue, and how prepress automation is key regarding the war that is today happening in online printing regarding price. So let's start. What can we tell about online printing? So there are no real market study about the weight of online printing in Europe. I did some survey by myself earlier this year, and from my estimation, by compiling public available information on the market, I estimate the online printing market, but just for the part of commercial printing, excluding photo albums and so on, around 2.5 billion euros in 2019 in Europe. It's probably more. Some market studies in Deutschland, for example, have a higher estimation, but it's just to give you an insight. From my perspective in this study, it's around 24 million orders per year, and the weight of online printing is, I think, between 10 to 15% of the average global value of commercial printing. But what's important is that in a decreasing market, commercial printing is decreasing in terms of growth for many years. The weight of online printing and the share of online printing is increasing. And this growth is really important. It's as many other market industries, e-commerce has a dominant growth, and many customers are turning to online. And for printers that are using a web to print store, the number of printing companies is decreasing or stable regarding past year Drupa study. But for those who are using a web to print system, the weight of online orders is increasing in their global mix. So that's something interesting. So in printing, like again in many other markets, e-commerce is a major trend and something that customers are more and more demanding about. About the major trends of this market, you need to know that 20% of online printers generate around more than 80% of the sales. These majors companies are Siwi, Simpress Online Printers, Graphinia, United Print, Flyer Alarm. So they are the leaders with world-renowned brands. But what is interesting is after many years of growth and also mergers and acquisition in that market, since 2 years, we notice a slowdown in their growth that is caused by a scissor effect. There's on the one hand a price war where all these players are fighting to provide the flyers at the lower price and so on. And at the same time, many of them have an acquisition model that is based on Google AdWords and other web marketing expenses. And the cost of these marketing expenses is increasing. So at the same time, you are lowering your margins and you have an increase of your acquisition costs. So that generates problems in terms of growth. And in parallel, what we noticed is a strong growth of smaller operators that are focused on niche markets or that are specialists. And that is interesting because it seems to have on this market big players and newcomers that are more specialized, smaller, closer to the customer. And in some way, it seems to be like what's happening in the grocery, for example, or short circuits in distribution. So this is a map I did about online printing in the world. I try to maintain it, but just to give you an information that online printing today is not just something happening in Europe or in the US. It's all over the world. Many of players are missing, but almost I think that in every country you have people that are looking at selling print online. The COVID crisis changed, I think, the game in the way that it accelerated current trends. For example, that scissor effect that I have just explained you has been completely accelerated during that crisis, and many of that big players stopped their marketing expenses because the costs were increasing. And at the same time, the lockdown period and problems in terms of shipping and frontier that were locked showed the limits of centralized marketing models. For example, companies that have one big factory in Germany or Italy and spreading their orders all across Europe went in trouble because they were not able to make deliveries to their customers, while at the same time, decentralized networks were able to survive to that COVID crisis. And instead of shipping prints, they were shipping orders through the web and manufacture them as close as possible at the delivery address. And that is something really important because many customers now are focused on crisis management and risk management, and centralized manufacturing is a risk. So decentralized networks appear as a good way to face this kind of crisis. And so new models are rising in online printing at a dramatic speed. We see cloud printing networks, as I explained, with decentralized production and all across the globe. We also see an increasing number of fulfillers that are providing connectors in Shopify, for example, enabling any type of Shopify retailer to provide customized goods, and they manage printing and customization of goods through a kind of drop shipping model, and that's quite new. And also you see Amazon Custom, which is new now, and it's a tool that's enabled to make web to print directly in Amazon on desktop and mobile app, and many printers are selling their product through this interface. So things are changing. And I think that the COVID crisis highlights how omnichannel printers are powerful and able to survive to this kind of crisis. Why pure players on offline or online are a bit threatened by this kind of crisis. Considering price and margin, the problem I explained is that this war around prices are creating dilemma. Online printers are working on decreasing price, always in fighting on having the most promotions and the lower price, because everything is compared around pricing. But at the same time, they need to invest on new machines, new workflows, IT, that is really a cost. And they need to spend a lot of money to acquire new customers. So you increase your spends, and at the same time, your revenue and your margin is decreasing. And this becomes more and more complex when you are a generalist that is able to sell almost everything and that don't own 100% of what he sells. And this type of platforms that is called fabless or hybrid faced problems because at certain moment they don't have enough gears to win that war. And for the companies that are manufacturers and that sell online, the situation is different because they have many opportunities to increase their margins and so to have an influence on pricing. And so we are going to see how. Just to make you understand what is the value chain in online printing. At first, like in any e-commerce website, you have acquisition or retention flows like AdWords, but also could be exhibition or salesman. Then, hopefully, it generates orders. And then after orders, then you enter the file checking process, ganging. And after ganging, then you start printing, finishing, conditioning, shipping. And after you re-enter a kind of marketing funnel where you try to convert your first purchase order to a loyal customer. So in blue, it's marketing. In green, prepress. And orange, you have the printing flow. And this is really a short diagram, but it will help you understand the next part of this slideshow. So how can we improve margin thanks to prepress automation? In many companies that are selling print online, you have hundreds of tanks of margin. What I call a tank of margin is when you start printing online, you discover a new world and you try to adapt offline process to the web. It's really rare to see someone starting completely from scratch and building something fully optimized for e-commerce. So the fact that you are trying to adapt offline processes to online generates some problems or things you can optimize later on. And all these optimizations are what I call tanks of margin. Some of them are presented here through bullet points. First one is standardization of custom orders. Instead of always making on-demand orders, if you start building a standardized offer, you will increase your ganging possibilities and you will improve your revenues and prices. Also, often selling online means making a lot of manual repetitive actions, copying information on one hand, pasting it in another way, or repeating things from your storefront to your ERP system. So the automation helps gaining time. And often people are exporting and importing data from one IT system to another, the IT system of the customer to your IT system, or the storefront to the ERP, as I explained. And so integration and automatic process of files helps gain time. Increasing speed of manufacturing is also a way to improve your margin because time is money. And standardization is a good way also to reduce number of after-sales cases and also have an impact on your margin. And at the end, one of the major tanks of margin is, of course, shipping costs. Now, if we zoom to the pre-flight and file editing, how prepress automation can improve at that step your margins. So at first, you need to understand that in web to print, the file and the people behind the computer is often a problem, because in many ways, if you are dealing with B2C, so end customers, they don't know anything about printing and about how to prepare a file. So they will make something on Word, Publisher, or so for example, Canva or tools like this, and they will think that because it's nice on their screen, you will be able to print it. And they are not aware of the constraints of printing. And even if you provide an online compositing tool, it's rare that the file you get at the end is ready for press. Considering resellers, for example, advertising agency or freelancers, the situation is better because you are dealing with professionals, but you need to understand that now most of them are digital native. They start learning the business and the job through digital. So they are not aware of the constraint of printing. For example, I see really frequently big, nice business cards with a large black printing, but it's not a rich black. It's just 100% black and nothing else. And a graphic designer that is making 80% of his time on web doesn't understand that black in printing is not really black. It's a combination of multiple colors. So that means that you get orders you need to convert. And that's the main difference between online printing and traditional e-commerce, because in online printing, the problems are starting once you get the order. While when you sell shoes, you just have to pick them from your stock and ship them. Prepress is a way, prepress automation, sorry, is a way to improve that step, which can be really costly in terms of time and investment of your teams and after sales case. If you automate your prepress process using pre-flight tools or file editing tools that help you edit rapidly PDF files and correct them without having to open Illustrator, load fonts, and so on, you will gain time and reduce the time needed for pre-flighting and file check. That means that at the end, your file check process will be shorter. Your customer will be happier because the files he provided will be controlled by your prepress experts. And at the end, you will have less after-sales service and after-sales incidents because customers weren't happy of the results caused by a missing font or poor resolution pictures. That's the first step. The second one is around ganging. Ganging is completely linked and is a key aspect of web to print. Web to print have raised thanks to the ganging of orders. So you take a lot of small basket order with low quantity, you group them, so you make a gang. And once you have enough to gang on your sheet, you print the sheet. So that's true for orders you can gang, and many of them are gangable. But I see many online printers or people starting on printing that are not aware of the constraints of ganging and that are not prepared to this. And the problem is that you don't handle 1 orders per day of 200 pieces the same way you are managing 10 offline orders of 1,000 or 2,000 pieces. It's a different way. You handle a lot of short orders, short quantity orders, and so you need to automate things. And this ganging step is frequently a bottleneck in the process of online printing because it's a nightmare of making it manually. Your prepress operator is waiting, he's trying to make gangs manually, so As soon as your system is starting growing and that you get orders flows coming from your website or coming flow from cloud printing platforms, you need to have in your prepress workflow a ganging system that will make the gangs automatically based on criteria of analysis of the files, determining the common case, common substrates and finishing, and building that gangs. So I would say that when you are starting thinking about selling prints online, you need to think about your back office and these ganging steps. Because when you start online, you need to think about scalability, being capable to manage 10 orders per day, as well as 100. And your system must be able to handle this. If you don't do that, at a certain moment, you will have bottleneck that will prevent you from growing, while probably your market will be in demand. So that's something you need to think about previously. And that is driving me to the next slide, which is workflow scalability. I've seen many players that are just starting working on web to print with scripts in InDesign, Acrobat, or Illustrators, and they try to work just in the same way they do offline. And so they make scripts. It works fine on one computer, but often it's impossible to scale it at the level of a team of prepress operators. And the problem is that your system that is working with one person prepress control is unable to follow the growth of your website. So you need again to think about scalable and reliable workflows. And it means that it mustn't be dependent of one computer of one person, because once you're starting selling online, it's almost all days, 24/7. And your website cannot stop once your prepress operator is on holidays or sick. So you need to build something that can work with only one operator, as well as 2, 3, 4, 5 different people that will pick up the files, control them, no matter the computer they're using or the license they have on their computer. So this is the same as your storefront architecture. You need to build something that could be scaled at big level, able to take one order to 100, and your back office must work and be capable of taking that flow without exploding. So I see some questions I will answer at the end. Seamless integration, as I explained at the beginning, today online printing is not limited to an e-commerce storefront, a unique storefront. No, e-commerce is everywhere. It means that, of course, you have your storefront, but you can also have white labeled storefront, for example, for one of your customer, which is a franchise, and you will build a storefront just for him with his templates, and his franchises will purchase orders directly from him. You also have, as I explained, cloud printing networks. It's companies that are dealing with head of big corporation, worldwide corporation. And they say, okay, instead of shipping your orders all across the world, then we ship just the file and we print them as close as possible as delivery address. That means that you are reducing the risk, and also you are reducing the carbon footprint. And that's something companies are more and more aware. And any printer today can be part of this cloud printing network. They just have to plug with them And when I say plug with them is often being able to use a connector to their ERP or use JSON files or XML files, or sometimes plugins like I explained for Shopify or others. So that's also another channel of taking orders. So your system must be able to plug to external IT system. If you work with big corporations, some of them are saying that for their ERP system, they need someone, a fulfiller, able to plug to their own ERP just to send back statuses of orders, for example, or tracking URLs for the files. And that cannot be done manually. So your IT system and your prepress workflows must be able to plug to external system and collect orders, collect files automatically with standard connectors. If you don't do that, that means that you will be just limited to one storefront, and you won't be able to take orders from sources that are able to provide you some jobs, and that's a lack. So you need to think about an IT architecture that is open and that could be seamlessly integrated to external IT systems. I already talked about the impact of bad files and bad conception on after sales. As soon as you are selling something online, you will be the victim of that dictator that is the consumer. Today, everyone, when he's purchasing something online, has the capability to put a bad advice, only one star at any time. And if he's not happy, he has a really important power to reduce your brand image and to impact it negatively. So after sales is really important. So of course, you can prevent problems in terms of color consistency, PDF standardization, PDF editing, approval, and so on, thanks to prepress workflows and prepress automation. And that's a way to prevent problems and to avoid them to appear. Because if I take the example of a file that is badly created or that has internal problem of fonts and so on, if you print it and ship it to your customer won't be happy. Probably will leave a bad comment, or he will complain. Maybe you will have to reprint the order to avoid him from putting a bad advice. So it will cost you a lot of money, and if it's just for a 50 euro order, it's a nightmare. If your prepress workflow is able to detect this, to correct it, or just to say, warning, don't print that job. If you are able to call your customer and say, listen, we have detected a problem on your file, it's not prepared correctly. If we print it, you won't be happy. You are changing the game and the relation with your customer, and you will think, okay, these persons are really professionals. And often people just, if they are resellers, for example, they will ask for explanations to improve themselves. And if they are not graphic art professionals, they will probably ask you, and sometimes they are ready to pay for that, to correct manually their file or to design it. So this prepress workflow is a kind of protection from you to reduce your after-sales costs and to improve the image of your company. So I'm arriving at the end of this webinar, and now I'm going to open to questions. Just I would like you to tell regarding this question of pricing, if that's don't think and don't limit online printing to customer acquisition, so acquisition costs, and pricing, and just reducing your margin to reach the lower price on the market. It's not only that. What's important to have in mind is that you need, as soon as your online printing system is growing, you need to optimize it every time. And often you have these tanks of margins everywhere, and especially in workflow automation. So as soon as you detect that people in your team are making manual action repeatedly, think about automation and think about how to prevent them from making this, because it has no added value, and put them on task with a real added value your customer will appreciate. And as soon as also you detect problems somewhere, also think about this way of optimizing your prepress workflows. That will help you gain time, gain money, improve your margins. And at the end, if you need to fight on price, you will have more weapons. So someone, I see Sylvain that is asking for talking. So I'm just opening discussion with him. And after I will also answer to your questions. So Sylvain from Chile Publish, I give you a voice. I think your mic is off. Okay, I think it's just one problem for joining. So I'm just going to answer to the question. So for first question I have is, what is the top 3 in French online printing companies? So I'm not 100% sure about my question, this question, because some companies have publicly available information because they are listed on stock exchanges, or because they are communicating about their figures, and others are more hidden. I would say that on top of online printing companies, you have, of course, companies like Vistaprint, if we are just talking about commercial printing. You also have companies from United Print and, for example, EasyPrint. If now you are looking more on, I would say, a more B2B market or reseller market, you have companies like Pixart Printing, Exaprint, that are having a big weight on the market. You also have smaller ones, but that are increasing their market share on the market, like Realizaprint, which is a portal dedicated to resellers, Print O'Clock in Toulouse. And now what's interesting is a new operator that is growing on the French market. It's called L'Imprimerie Européenne, European Printing. And he's positioning as the kind of TripAdvisor or Booking.com of printing. He's just a marketplace and a price comparator. And this new model is rising on the market. So that's just to give you a landscape of the French market. If also you are integrating, for example, photo album market, you have companies like Siwi, that is really important, Planet Cards and so on, that are a big weight on the French online print market. I also forget German companies like Online Printers and Flyer Alarm that are operating on the French market, and also Sexoprint. Second question, do you think smaller companies turnover between 1 million to 3 million euros should offer online print? Is it financially feasible for this size of company? What would you recommend them? So yeah, I think that even for companies that are just making 100,000 euros of revenue, online printing is important. Why? Because today, just think about your behavior as a consumer. No matter the type of product you're looking for, you are trying to find it on the web. And for you as a personal consumer, as well as a professional consumer. So you need, as a professional, to be where your customers are. There's a marketing mantra that says fish where the fishes are. And online today is everywhere. So you need to have an online presence. It doesn't mean to have an e-commerce storefront. As I explained, there are many ways to get orders from the web. It can be a storefront, it can be cloud printing, it can be Amazon or so on. So, but I think that you need to have a digital presence and a digital visibility. So yes, companies between 1 million to 3 million euros, they are eligible for being online. And it will help their salesmen get leads from a new source. It will help renew the number of customers and add new customers, and it will increase your growth. Now, in terms of your question is it financially feasible? Yes, but you need to scale the investment on your system to the revenue you are making. Don't think that you will become Vistaprint within a snap. It's like selling goods online, starting selling this good and saying, okay, I'm going to become Amazon. The investment is not the same. So you need to scale your project depending on the revenue you're doing and the revenue you are expecting. And that means that you need to adjust the investment and focus on the time to market. I see sometimes companies with that kind of range of revenue that are going to invest 100,000 or 200,000 euros in a web-to-print platform, plus maybe one full-time person. And that means that it's a huge investment regarding their size and their revenue. That's not possible. If you are at that level of scale, I recommend to choose a SaaS platform with a low monthly rate and a fast time to market so that you are able to sell rapidly online, to get orders. And after 1 or 2 years, when you see your revenue increasing, you are able to switch to more costly platforms. That's my recommendation. Next question, where do you see the most opportunities or open or closed online print shops? That's a very good question. Again, it's depending of your market size. Today, reaching directly the end customer, the individual, for example, is really costly because the acquisition cost will be really high because there is this war around AdWords, and the only winner is Google because the costs of AdWords is increasing depending on the competitive pressure. And at the same time, these are customers that need a lot of time and investment to treat and process their orders. So sometimes for small companies, it's better to position yourself as a subcontractor. For example, just enable file uploads or plug to cloud printing platforms. And so you get standardized orders, pre-flight orders, and it doesn't have a too important impact on the global workflow. Today, considering resellers, the problem is that unfortunately, due to the COVID crisis, many of them are probably going to die and disappear. But at the same time, I think that, as I explained, as big players in Europe in online printing are threatened by this crisis and will need to change, there are open opportunities on the market. And also, I think that something really important you need to have in mind is that many of the purchasers, professional purchasers in big companies or in advertising agency or event agencies have understood that most of the online printing platforms are not manufacturing and are just distributing something that is manufactured by another company. And now they are looking to find the manufacturer, the printer. And at the same time, consumers in all over the countries are asking for locally manufactured products because there's this kind of economical patriotism that is strengthening all over the Europe. And I think that's something that is important because you can have a specific mix on the market, by position yourself on this local printer, open to professional and a kind of direct to producer model. And that's a good way to position yourself and to enter that market. So I think it's where there are the most opportunities today. Sylvain, I think that
yeah,
you wanted to add something.
Sorry?
I think that you raised your hand, so maybe you wanted to ask something?
I just want to know if you already talk about the editing, the inline editing parts in your webinar, because I was not in the beginning. I was not there in the beginning. I'm sorry for that. And I don't know if it was something that you discussed during the beginning of this webinar, but it could be interesting to talking about the inline editing solution that we can propose on our site, or the different inline editing solution there is on the market, and if it's something, because I've heard something about the prepress. You told about the prepress at a certain point, and I think it could be interesting to discuss about these topics. So maybe it's out of the scopes. I don't know exactly, but up to you again, Ludovic. But it could be interesting to mention this.
So the scope was more on around yes, prepress automation and the way it can help improve margins in the printing costs and the way to reduce your cost. Yeah. Considering online editing, again, it's a question of the type of targets you're reaching, and if you're looking for end customers, franchises, and so on. So it's really a question of business model. After, the way you handle it, and depending on the platform you're choosing, it will have an impact on the after prepress job you have to do. The more intelligent is your online editing platform, if you decided to go that way, so the more this online editor is well designed and intelligent, the less job you will have to make after in prepress, and the less after sales problems you will have. So that is something that you need to think about and to analyze, because if you do it the bad way, just saying, okay, I'm going to enable online editing on nice templates, but I don't care about bleed, about things, or about image resolution and so on, you will let your consumer do what they want online.
Correct.
The problem is that they will invest time in designing what they want, and at the end, they will be disappointed, because either you will say that you're not able to produce what they have designed on your tool, which is completely crazy, or either the results won't be good because image quality will be poor and so on. So yes, that's something which is really important in your web to print workflow.
Right.
So next question, create your own web to print solution or buy an off-the-shelf product with customization capabilities and scalable. That's a good question from, I will try to pronounce it correctly. Sorry if that's not correct, from Gert Levin. It's a very good question, because there is this temptation of starting from scratch and inventing everything, especially if you have developers in your team. Often they say, wow, don't pay for that. It will take me 2 weeks to make it and it will be perfect. No, it's just like if your guy would say you, okay, believe me, I will design Amazon in 1 month. No. It's really complicated to make web to print, and if you have companies that have invested millions of euros and tens of people to design web to print solution, it's not because they are completely crazy, it's because it's requiring time and money and a very precise knowledge. So if you think about starting from scratch, it's something that is possible if you have an analysis of the market, if you know your market, if you know your customers, and if you have a first experience. If you have no experience in web, no experience in selling online, I would prevent you from doing that, because you are going to enter an IT funnel and to concentrate on project management and development instead of focusing on selling. And today, your business is not to develop softwares. Your business is to make money by selling print and manufacturing print. And so, especially in these times, is this period of crisis and this period also of opportunities, you need to move fast and to go fast to the market. And to go fast, you need to choose the easiest solution. And it's just a question of balance between investment and results. So today, my position regarding this is, if you are starting from zero, if you don't have any website, or if you have an old-fashioned storefront that isn't generating online orders, I would recommend you try to find an off-the-shelf solution and configure it and move fast to the market and find your customers, get orders. And after a certain time, then you will be able to think about designing something by your own that will be closer to your needs, but maybe not, you will stay on the off-the-shelf solution. If you already have a website and you need to migrate it, that's something different. But really be careful around this, because many companies lost thousands of euros and time in this, and at the end generated just an empty boutique because they just focused on IT. Other question, are there open systems that let you quick start an online web shop, even for internal demands? This question is closed to the former one. In fact, you have, yes, open source e-commerce system that are existing and on which some plugins are available to adapt them to web to print, but also it's a question of maturity, and it's a question of the targets you're trying to reach. Because these systems are not thought at the origin for selling print. They are thought for selling shoes, for selling any type of goods, but not to sell product that needs to be manufactured. And so it's also a question of maturity. So yes, open systems exist, like in any type of the e-commerce industry. But you need to be really careful on the investment they will require in terms of developments, in terms of plugins and so on. That's something that is really, really important. Question from Lawrence Lers, how do existing players connect all those components, GDF, custom connectors, or some other standards? I don't know all of them. Maybe it will be interesting to have Sylvain's points of view, but from my perspective, some of them are providing ready-to-use plugins that can connect, I don't know, for example, to Salesforce, to Pitstop server, to so on. So they already have built bridges with common standard softwares. And others are working with kind of intermediate automation workflows, like maybe you know them, Zapier. By building a universal bridge, you can plug other systems. So it depends in a way of the strategy of the editor. Maybe Sylvain, you want to add something around this?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you and to raise my hands, but I think depending the system that you want to connect, and especially on an online web shop, there is many possibilities to connect different components. And for example, well, I just want to mention my system, but as you know, we have an online editing solution where we propose a lot of connectors to connect in the ecosystem. Means if I look at the custom connectors or some other standards, we have many connectors to connect to these different standards. So there is plenty of solution, plenty of connectors, plenty of plugins that you can find, depending, of course, the software that you want to use. But in the ecosphere, you can find a lot of things. And well, maybe it could be an offline discussion, but we could discuss more further about these different connectors that we can propose to connect, for example, to an e-commerce platform like Magento, or PrestaShop, or WooCommerce, or NobCommerce, or if you're more US based, it could be something like Shopify or things like that. We have many solutions. We have many partners who have developed their own connectors to connect to our solution, for example. So I'm quite sure you can find a lot of custom connectors or standard connectors on the market.
Okay, and how do you handle this at Chili? Is it a library of connectors, for example, you provide to your customers?
Okay, so thanks to mention our solution. Indeed, it was not the idea to mention Chili Publish, but indeed with Chili Publish,
No,
there is kind of, well, I don't know if we can call this marketplace, but it's kind of marketplace that we can propose with Chili products. So it's not our own connectors, so it's connectors from our partners, but we have a long list of our partners in our website, and you can find them on our website, for example. And we are building something together with the marketing department to have a clear list of the different e-commerce connectors, for example. Well, we're going to start with the e-commerce connectors, and the idea is to have MIS connectors, well, the list of the MIS connectors, the DAM connectors, the PIM connectors, the CRM connectors, and more than just this. But yeah, we're going to start with the e-commerce first to start. And then we're going to continue because it's a long story. This marketplace is so huge. It's so important. There's a lot of topics to talk about it. And it's in progress. And I think you're going to be involved in these things, Ludovic, in the future, probably.
Thank you for this example. So that's a good example of what an editor can provide you with. So to get back to the former question, I would recommend, in fact, to start from your own existing ecosystem. So which kind of CRM are you using if you have one? What is your MIS or ERP system? What is your invoicing system? And where you are going to design your architecture or to choose solution, I would really recommend to select solutions that have already this bridge built. Because if these bridges are not existing because the editor didn't think of them, it means that you will have to build them, to maintain them, and it's costly. And today, IT and software development in a SaaS world is made of many different technologies that are able to discuss together and to have these open bridges. So don't build something that would be like a computer without USB port, for example, and that won't be able to plug to anything, and without Bluetooth. Build something and choose something that arrives with plenty of connectors and that have bridges with your softwares and with standard softwares, so that you are at the end, you are able to focus only on product design, on software or storefront design and pricing and getting orders. Don't focus on how to develop, how to manage a project, how to make tests. That's not your job as a printer. Your job is to optimize your workflow, to make money, and to build an incredible user experience for your customers. So focus on this and choose solutions that are able to help you gain time. So we're arriving at the end of this hour. I don't see any other questions. So if you don't have other questions to ask, I'm just going to thank you for your attention and hope to see you soon in the VIGC. Keep safe and have a nice weekend.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Ludovic. Have a good day. And thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Thank you, the audience. Bye-bye.